Boxing Talk 100, this your boy K Smooth, man, coming to you with another video, man. Hey, let's get right to it, man. It's been a while. Hey, man, let's get right to it, man. Terence Bud Crawford. And y'all already know what he did, you know what I'm saying, last Saturday, you know what I'm saying, against Canelo, you know what I'm saying. And a lot of people lost a lot of money, you know what I'm saying, against Canelo, you know what I'm saying. And, with the great skills that, Canelo got, you know what I'm saying, you can only... You can't do nothing but respect Canelo, man, in the game, you know what I'm saying? Giving or take, you know what I'm saying, him running, you know what I'm saying, the boxing, sports world. Him being the money maker, you know what I'm saying? Now he don't probably get money. Yeah, of course, Canelo gonna get a bag, you know what I'm saying, in the near future. But as being, a champion at 160, there's a new surfer in town, and his name is Terence Bud Crawford. Terence Crawford, beat Canelo in a high, professional, skill matchup. You know what I'm saying? Something that we haven't seen in quite a while. Ever since, back in the days, good fighters such as Sugar Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns and, you get the Sugar Ray Leonards and, Robert Durans and, a lot of great fights from back then, you know what I'm saying? It's just been a while, you know what I'm saying? But since, Floyd and Pacquiao being able to break, certain records, we get Mike Tyson in his era, you know what I'm saying? Breaking records. We got Muhammad Ali, back in his in his career, you know what I'm saying? Rest in peace to Muhammad Ali. A boxer that paved the way for all boxers to be able to, fight. So, going back to, Terence Bud Crawford on defeating Canelo, what's new for Terence Bud Crawford? You're an undisputed champion at 168. And, beating Canelo, you got to understand, Canelo, he's been the boxing guru for over 20 plus years, being on top of his game. And finally coming to, I wouldn't say of not being able to get his money, because Canelo going to get his money. He's just not going to be the money man, you know what I'm saying? Just being able to say that, everybody that's putting their money or being able to bet against Canelo, it ain't gonna be like that anymore. If Canelo can't, be Bud, then Bud is the new man, you know what I'm saying, that they gonna revolve the money around to be able to see who can be Bud now. It ain't Canelo anymore. Boxing Talk 100, it's not Canelo anymore, you know what I'm saying? Bud is the greatest fighter of this era, you know what I'm saying? And definitely, proven, breaking records and, making history, you know what I'm saying, and beating Canelo. With so many other fighters like Errol Spence and Jamal Charlo, all these fighters that wanted to get, the Canelo fight, Bud beat them all to it and was successful at getting the job done. You can't do nothing but, take your hat off to, Terence Bud Crawford. Has taken the belt in 5 divisional, different, weight classes. Becoming a 3 divisional, world champion. You know what I'm saying? That's just something unheard of, with Terence Bud Crawford. Making, that type of history. You know what I'm saying? So, going back to the fight, man, Terence Bud Crawford, man, he put on a wonderful, a wonderful show, you know what I'm saying? Of all the levels that you can be able to put on in boxing, you know what I'm saying, at that level, being able to compete. Terence Bud Crawford and, Canelo being 2 of the greatest fighters of this decade. And, being able to put on the show for the fans. Turkey and everybody that put on an amazing fight, last Saturday. It went well, you know what I'm saying? A lot of big money makers, you know what I'm saying, betting within the fights. And, a lot of people went for Canelo. A lot of people favor Canelo because you got to understand Canelo was, the champion coming within this fight. Terence Bud Crawford had to go take those motherfucking belts, and he did just that. You know what I'm saying? Congratulations to, Terence Bud Crawford. But he was just, too quick. Much more sharper than, Canelo, that was kind of, sloppy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, there were certain times where Canelo, he tried to, come straight with his, punches. But it just seemed like he was just on an off night, just throwing punches. He couldn't been more straighter than, sharper than, Terence Bud Crawford. And, throwing punches and, landing, being able to see who connects and being able to see who lands efficiently. Bud was just too much for Canelo, on that fight night. Canelo was trying to do everything in his power to be able to, at least give Bud, some type of fight. Bud and Bomac, they just had a wonderful game plan coming into the fight. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people, they didn't think that, Bud's weight and all that would be able to, match up to Canelo. But, when the fight is being presented and, type of fighter that Canelo is, you got to be able to come with it. Because if you're not ready, to be able to put on a spectacular show, then you give that, that show to Canelo. He begins to take over, the show. But, being that who Bud is, and the fighter who he is, went in with an excellent game plan. Not only going in with an excellent game plan, beating Canelo to the punch, landing on Canelo efficiently, throughout the fight. Throughout the whole fight, he was pretty much in charge of, the whole, 12 rounds. Bud being able to beat, Canelo to the punch. Whether, beating him to the punch or using, other, defensive tactics to be able to get away from Canelo. And being able to have great counterpunching, defense, when it comes to, being able to get away from the punch against, Canelo. When you pay, you mess up, Bud made you pay, the whole night, Canelo. Off of counterpunching and making mistakes. So that was more, that's what it came down to, being able to see who landed more, Power, both of them got power, Bud was able to, take, Canelo's power. And the whole night he took that, away from Canelo. Bud came in as the bigger guy and, with the weight, it wasn't nothing, It was just forfeiting, just right for, Terence Bud Crawford, making, his, making it his way, the whole night against Canelo. Now, like I said, I got to be able to, respect my highs, respect for Canelo, man, is at the highs, because, we got to be able to understand, Canelo gave us so many years in the sport of boxing, so many years of being a great champion, and then, it has to end like this, but that's boxing, this is where a true, competition is at its finest, at the highest level. And Bud is there, whether we like it or not, this is our 168-pound, champion. Super middleweight champion. Now, what's next for Bud after beating, and putting on a spectacular show against Canelo? What's next? We got so many options, that, whether, if Bud want to continue to stay at 168 super middleweight, he can do that, in defending the belts. There's so many names, that's at 175 that was at 168 once upon a time, like, David Benavidez at 175. What's his name? Dimitri Bivol, is at 168. Now he's at 175. What is his name? Dimitri Mazava or something like that. He was at 168. Now he's at 175. So a lot of competition is at 175 if they want to be able to go down at, at 168 to make, another undisputed type of matchup with, Bud. Turkey Ishalai, he would, they wouldn't mind. They wouldn't mind putting on these spectacular fights, with, Terence Bud Crawford. You know, if it all makes sense, you know what I'm saying? If those guys wanted to, you know, move, you know, back down to 168, yes, we could see, you know, Crawford versus Bivol. Even though he's too big, but you just never know how it might play out, you know what I'm saying? From 175 back down to 168. Same thing with David Benavidez. They're too big for, you know, Bud, but they would have to drop down if you really want to fight Bud. And Arthur Bitterbeeve, you know, same thing at 175, moving back down to 168. You know, when it's all said and done, Terence Bud Crawford at 168 being a unified, undisputed champion, he don't have nothing to really prove anymore, because when it's all said and done, everything is in, you know, the record books. You know, it had already fulfilled its spot, you know what I'm saying, in the books. You know, Terence Bud Crawford unbeaten Canelo. Same thing that would have been for Canelo if he would have been, you know, if he would have beat Bud, you know. The same results would have been for Canelo. It just happened to have been, you know, the better man and the, you know, having the better night, you know, Terence Bud Crawford. You know, at this type of competition level, you know what I'm saying, at the, you know, at the top. You know, so 168, you know, being undisputed champion, you know what I'm saying, making history. Yeah, you know, a lot of people can say Canelo should have won that against Bud, but give or take, Bud is nothing easy. Nothing easy about Bud being able to get, you know, a win. You know, Canelo being able to, you know, come into the fight having, you know, whatever type of game plan that he had, and he failed. So, Bud, you know, like I said, you know, when we think about, you know, 160, you know what I'm saying, Bud told everybody, you know, he might want to be able to, you know, if being a 3-divisional, you know, world champion, you know, he could be a 4-divisional world champion now, you know, moving from, you know, what was it, 135 to 140 to 147, being a unified champion to 168, you know, being able to, you know, be successful, you know what I'm saying, making, you know, history at 168. You don't got nothing to prove at 168 now. Now you could either do it at, you know, 160. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of, you know, competition and champions, you know, at 160. You know, we got Xander Beck, you know what I'm saying, Alan Newley, you know what I'm saying, WBO, IBF champion, 17-0 with 12 knockouts at 160-pound division, you know, which, you know, Bud could take that belt. We got Carlos Adams, you know what I'm saying, WBC champion, 24 wins, 18 KOs, 1 loss, 1 draw. He is a WBC champion at 160. This would be, you know, a fight that Bud would probably want to take on as well. Long as these belt holders got a belt at 160, you know, this would make sense, you know, for Bud if he's able to go at 160 and try to do it again, you know, being undisputed, you know, a unification, making these unification matches. Go get a belt at 160, Bud, and you'll be heading towards undisputed, you know, making these super fights with these names. And then we got Irish Landy Lara, you know, WBA champion, 31 wins, 19 KOs, 3 losses, 3 draws. But, you know what I'm saying, is, you know, fighting at the highest level, you know what I'm saying, Irish Landy. You know, a great veteran at the game, you know what I'm saying, and still got a little bit of, you know, tanking the gas to be able to go to give these guys, you know, a championship, you know, caliber type matches. You know, so that's what makes sense for, you know, Terence Bud Crawford if you want to go at 160 and try to go make history there, you know what I'm saying, being a 5, you know what I'm saying, in 5 different weight classes, being able to make history. You know, Terence Bud Crawford. And of course we had, you know, Jamal Charlo was 168, the super champion, then he got stripped, you know what I'm saying, within his, you know, whatever he was going through and all that shit, you know what I'm saying. And you gotta understand, you know, a great ex-champion, you know, Jamal Charlo at 160 to 168, you know what I'm saying, that fight can be made with, you know, Terence Bud Crawford. Jamal Charlo versus, you know, Terence Bud Crawford would be one for the ages. If you think Canelo, you know, was a good fight for Bud, then we would also throw, Jamal Charlo, 160 pound to 168. This will be another great fight, that Turkey Ishalai could be able to showcase. You know what I'm saying? And if it's at 168, what other way, Bud can be able to defend his titles against, Jamal, Charlo. Give or take at 160 or 168 if, however it plays out. Jamal Charlo, 34 wins, 0 losses, 23 KOs. Can that fight be made? Jamal Charlo versus Terence Bud Crawford. Comment at the bottom and let me know what y'all think about that fight. Because I think, honestly, like I said, options at 160, I wouldn't be mad at that if Bud was able to, vacate the belts at 168 and go down to 160 and make history. You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't be no difference, It's just moving back down to 160, where he would probably, if he's not heavier, feeling heavy, which he says that at around 168 he feels good, but give or take at 160 he would also probably feel, really good. And giving it another shot at, being undisputed. Terence Bud Crawford. He's just that fucking, gifted as a fighter, to be able to fight, in all these, moving up, moving from a small weight, going into, a bigger weight. It's unheard of, But Bud, he been boxing and being a great veteran that he is, man. He's been deserving, and putting in that work and being disciplined, you know what I'm saying? But Bud is a great disciplined fighter, you know what I'm saying? And when it comes down to this boxing shit, every name that he said that he wanted to fight, you know what I'm saying? And then they've given him a name, he beat them all, you know what I'm saying? With ease. Styles make matchups, you know what I'm saying? And like I said, Bud, he been asking for that Canelo fight for a long time, and he got the job done. Now it's on to bigger and better things, you know what I'm saying, and better challenges. At 160 or defending your titles at 168. Stand put at 168. What does Bud want to do? But yeah, man, I'm happy for, Terence Bud Crawford and making history, and, it was a lot of money, being made. I think gross pay Terence ended up getting about 80 million, you know what I'm saying? About 50 to 80 million, which is a good, purse bag. Canelo getting about 100 to 150 just for getting spanked and losing his belts. And like I said, you got to give your hat off to Canelo of being a good sportsman, accepting his defeat, you know what I'm saying, and having no excuses for, for Terence Bud Crawford. You gotta respect Canelo. I ain't mad at for Canelo for, if he wants to rematch, you know what I'm saying, with Bud, tables would definitely turn, you know what I'm saying, giving, Terence Bud Crawford an advantage and, being able to have more money. The same about, same amount of money that Canelo made in the fight that he lost against Crawford. The tables will turn. Now, Bud will be making the money, 100 to 150 million, with all the belts and being the man on top, and everybody, wanting to fight Canelo. Terence Bud Crawford. Everybody was gonna be wanting to fight, Bud now. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of them fighters, I ain't gonna say that they hated on him, but a lot of them didn't think that, they could, he could beat, Bud could beat, Canelo. Such as the, Jamal Charlo and, a lot of other fighters, that doubted, Terence Bud Crawford. You know what I'm saying? But styles make matchups, and, it's shocking, anything can happen in the sport, you know what I'm saying? When you make your bets and, you place your bets, you got to be able to place them, carefully. Because a lot of us was wrong with this Canelo and Crawford fight, And a lot of people lost millions of dollars within this fight, placing a bet on, Canelo. Boxing Talk 100. But yeah, man, the fights will be good, man. Could you imagine, Bud, staying at 168, being able to make more money, not having nothing to prove, but if he just wanted to still stay at 168, I mean, fighters that, they would want him to fight, like David, we go back to it. David being at 175, he would have to, move back down. And David even said that he would never fight, Terence Bud Crawford. Bud said that he would never fight David Benavidez, but shit, you never know how the tables turn now. Terence some guy bigger, you know what I'm saying, and you never know what Bud gonna do. He is all we know. He could fuck around and get bigger, 168, and then climb right to 175, heading towards heavyweight. You just never know how this shit played out. We don't see him come all the way from 126 to 130. Terence Bud making his way up. So I wouldn't be surprised, anything can happen. We don't see Canelo fight, Bivol and Dimitri, all these other fighters, Mazarov and, Bivol and, whoever he don't lost against, whoever he don't made fights against, whoever Canelo don't lost against, Terence Bud Crawford can fight the same fighters that, that beat Canelo. That's at 175. 168 to 175, Bud would have to make a big, decision, if he would want to move up and face those type of fighters. Or go down and make it easy work, at 160. Terence Bud Crawford. Boxing Talk 100. But yeah, man. I love, Terence Bud Crawford. He on top of his game right now. Hey, what is he, 43 wins? Or is he 40? He was 41-0. Now he's 42-0. And so, beating Canelo off a great win, that says a lot. Still undefeated. You the man. All shots called, be able to, be in position to be able to fight whatever fight and whoever they put in front of Bud. Bud gonna, make decisions of the fights that he want to be able to. I ain't saying pick and choose, but who's left? It'll just be a bad for whoever, giving or take whoever they put him against, to be able to lose against Bud. Unless they go in there with the will and have it on their mind that they can go in there and beat, Terence Bud Crawford. You got to go in there with the will, that mentality. You can't go in there with thinking that, just to go in there and get a bag. Because if you're thinking like that, you ain't going to beat Terence Bud Crawford, especially not in this era. He's too good of a fighter, to be able to just be thinking that you're going to win, You got to go in there and knock Terence Bud Crawford out, especially in this time, in this era. You know what I'm saying? And so we'll see what happens, at 160, I don't want to go too far with Terence Bud Crawford, but, just to continue to congratulate him on his win against, Canelo. It was a hard, task to be able to, beat Canelo. The Mexican Latino great, champion, you got to be able to get him out the way. And, Terence Bud Crawford did that, you want to be able to limit, the conversation, So nothing to be talked about, if it comes to winning and losing. Boxing Talk 100. And Bud, Bud is our modern day GOAT. And a lot of people compare, they keep comparing, Bud to Floyd Mayweather. But times have changed, man, with, Floyd. I respect Floyd for what he did, and I love Floyd. To me, when you talk about comparing the fighters, and the skills, Floyd, he's just different from his era, To be 50-0 from his era, man, it's remarkable, man. It's just unbelievable, for what he did in his career and what he's done for boxing and the fans. You know what I'm saying? Through all them years, you know, leading up to being able to be retired, you know, Floyd Money Mayweather. You know, instead of taking these exhibition fights and shit like that kind of changed, you know, the sport of boxing. But I'm not mad at that either. You know what I'm saying? You did it in championship mode where you became undefeated in a professional, you know, a true world champion. You know, Floyd Money Mayweather beating a lot of world champions, making history, you know what I'm saying? So that's something that we can't forget about with Floyd Money Mayweather. In the numbers, you know what I'm saying, you know, speak for itself. Now, when it comes to Bud is just, you know, this modern day, you know, time, you know, is too young for Floyd, I believe, you know, to be able to keep up with somebody like, you know, Terence Bud Crawford. You know, the only mistakes Bud can make against, you know, Floyd is, you know, letting him, you know, be Floyd, you know what I'm saying? And being under the lights, you know, to where for so many years, you know, y'all bow down to Floyd, you know, within conversation. That's the only way Terence Bud Crawford will lose his fight. But if that fight was to be made, but if you was to be yourself, you know, against Floyd, you know what I'm saying, in box, you know what I'm saying, that's going to be, you know, it's just hard to say, man, you know, because Floyd, he still got a lot of skills. Even though he's old, he's still fast as fuck. He's still a master at boxing, you know what I'm saying, however you want to put it, you know what I'm saying. Now, when you think about the performances, you know, when Floyd fought, you know, Canelo, it was a great performance. A lot of people says that Terence Bud Crawford performance was way better than Floyd's, but I kind of disagree, you know. I think, you know, Canelo took a lot of more punishment in the Floyd Mayweather fight than, you know, Terence Bud Crawford. Now, Terence Bud Crawford did really well to be able to beat Canelo and outland Canelo, you know, when the moment was brought up. You know, he had, you know, certain highlight punches, you know what I'm saying, landing on Canelo that the fight world, you know what I'm saying, was able to see. You know, he landing efficiently against, you know, Canelo. You know what I'm saying? So when you talk about, you know, Canelo being able to take punishment from Bud, yes, it was a boxing lesson, you know what I'm saying, of a boxing lesson. It was definitely a boxing lesson, you know what I'm saying? But a lot of people don't, you know, think on it. You know, Canelo was also, you know, doing work on Bud too. I think with Canelo, you know, when Canelo fought Floyd, Canelo couldn't touch Floyd. That's just my opinion when I seen the fight. So it's just different, you know what I'm saying? Both ended up beating Canelo regardless. So however you put it, you know what I'm saying, who beat, you know, Canelo the worst, that shit don't matter. They both got the win against Canelo when it's all said and done. Now, if Crawford and Floyd was to be able to make that fight, because I know everybody waiting on it, you know what I'm saying, if that fight was to be made, how would it play out? I just think that, you know, it's, you know, like I said, this modern day is too young for Floyd. You know, Floyd would have to keep up with, you know, Bud. Bud ain't just going in there to box, you know what I'm saying? He's going there to land efficiently. And then when I'm saying like landing, I'm meaning, you know, pick you apart, you know, socking you up where he want to be able to punch you at. Not just, you know, boxing and being a master of boxing, you know, scoring points like, you know, Floyd would. Eventually, Floyd, you know, it'd take, you know, much more time to be able to wear the opponent down, break the opponent down. But, you know, Floyd, you know, he gets the job done, you know what I'm saying, being able to box and have true, you know, boxing master skills, you know what I'm saying, being able to, you know, break the opponent down, you know what I'm saying, land efficiently and, you know, get the opponent out of there. Floyd Money Mayweather, whether he beats you by unanimous decision. Floyd always gets the win, you know, in unanimous decision, close fights. But with Bud got the skills to be able to knock you out. Now, Canelo was a tough fighter. We never seen Canelo hit the, you know, the mat, you know what I'm saying, before, or been hurt in a way to where he, you know, hit the canvas. We never seen that from, you know, Canelo. So when you talk about power, you know what I'm saying, being able to match up, you know, and with Floyd and Bud, I definitely give, you know, Terence the more power edge, you know what I'm saying? Now, when you talk about landing efficiently, that's a hard one because Floyd, he can punch your ass out too. You know what I'm saying? And is a great, when you talk about a great, and I'm talking about a superb motherfucking, you know, having the IQ of boxing. Floyd has that. You know what I'm saying? Not taking that away from Bud either, but when you talk about the master IQ, Floyd definitely has that over Bud. You know what I'm saying? Bud just now getting in his bag. Yes, he beat a good, you know, elite caliber fighter like, you know, Canelo, and it was of a great, you know, fight to be able to get on your boxing record, you know, Bud. But, you know what I'm saying, I feel like he still got a lot of more work to do. Mayweather don't got really no work to do. He don't prove everything that he had to prove, you know what I'm saying, at least with Bud being at 42-0. Can he retire right now? Yes, he can retire. But you got to be able to understand and listen to what the trainer Bomac is saying. If they want Bud to steal the fight, that means Bud's going to get more fights to be able to even make his, you know, boxing record even more better. You know what I'm saying? Being 42 wins, he still got, you know, 8 more wins to be able to be at 50-0 to catch Floyd. So you got all these fighters that's in the way, you know what I'm saying? Whether, you know, see, the thing that y'all got to know about Terence Bud Crawford, once again, he can stay at 168, you know what I'm saying, defend those titles and make a bag, you know what I'm saying, or whatever he want to do at 168. He can go to 160, you know what I'm saying, to be able to, you know, capture titles, you know, get a title, unify the title, and become undisputed, making history again at 160. Or possibly he could fool around and go back down to 154. Which he said he wasn't going to go back to 154 to possibly fight Boots, but you never know. You know what I'm saying? Money talks. You know, if the fight with Boots want to be made, Boots got to be able to move from 154 and go to 160. That's the only way that fight could be made, you know, with Terence Bud Crawford. And Terence Bud Crawford, he would be in position to be given the advantage of any percentage of money, you know, being able to whatever he wants. You know what I'm saying? Terence Bud Crawford. So, Bud is that nigga right now, man. One of y'all, whether y'all want to admit it right now, Bud is the man right now. And Bud, you know what I'm saying, he deserves to be in whatever position that he's in to be able to, you know, relax and go on vacation and, you know, come back and, you know, sit at the table and come up with a new plan. It's going to be exciting, you know, to be able to see, you know, what news, you know, Bud bring back to the table, you know, once he comes back, you know, from vacation, or, you know, just being able to celebrate, you know, the great win, you know, phenomenal victory, you know, over, you know, Canelo, you know. But yeah, man, Boxing Talk 100, man. That's Terence Bud Crawford for you, you know what I'm saying? Let's talk about Teofimo and Shakur. You know, that's gonna be a tough fight at 140. You know, it's gonna be a close fight because Shakur's chin really ain't been tested yet. You know what I'm saying? But Shakur is a great skilled motherfucking fighter. You know what I'm saying? When you talk about great skills, speed, you know, being able to have the IQ, being able to land punches, you know what I'm saying, efficiently, being able to tire the opponent and breaking down the opponent, Shakur is a great fucking boxer that can destroy you. You know what I'm saying? Now, the only thing I got a problem with Shakur is, you know, with Teofimo is power. Being able to match up that power with Teofimo. Because the same shit that what I just said about Shakur, skills and all that shit, Teofimo is a great champion too that's going to bring that shit as well. Skills and, you know, being able to pay the bills. You know, so I think, you know, Shakur, man, Shakur going to get tested in this one. You know what I'm saying? He's going to get tested by Teofimo. You know, and if Shakur could be at 140 and if he's able to match that weight at 140 and be disciplined and know what's at stake at 140, he shouldn't have a problem being able to compete. You know what I'm saying? With Teofimo, you know what I'm saying? 100%. He'll be able to match well at 140, you know. the weight, it would be able to mold in Shakur perfectly to be able to fit at 140. He's a talented fighter. He's a blessed fighter. He's a gifted fighter. Call it however you want to see it. Shakur is going to be able to, compete at, 140, giving these guys hell, And, the main goal is to be able to go capture, a belt, to be able to unify, get a belt unified and on to undisputed. You know what I'm saying? That's what it's all about with Shakur. Now, it would be a test because Teofimo is definitely defending his belt, putting his belt on the line, to where, Shakur has to go in there and take it. It's going to be a hard task, you know what I'm saying? If Shakur is able to box Teofimo well, we could see a unanimous decision, you know what I'm saying? No knockout loss. It's going to take a lot to be able to knock out, Teofimo. And we haven't really seen Teofimo hit the mat, either, you know what I'm saying? In order for Shakur to be able to get Teofimo out of there, you're going to have to beat Teofimo to the punch. The whole 1 through 12 rounds, being able to land on Teofimo and getting these people that judge the fights, you know what I'm saying? It can't be close. You got to go in there and lump Teofimo up, bloody him up. It can be close, you know what I'm saying? Because I feel like if Shakur can't knock out, Teofimo, then they going to try to, give the fight to Teofimo, you know what I'm saying, and steal. Because Teofimo is just no regular, boxer, you know what I'm saying? He's also, how would you say he's that popular, in boxing to where, a lot of money is behind Teofimo. A lot of money. And these people, you know what I'm saying, have been seeing Teo grind, you know what I'm saying, hard over all these years to be able to be in position to where he's at now. Being undisputed champion at 135 and then losing against, Kambosos, and then, moving to 140, capturing the belt from Taylor, getting a belt from, Taylor, becoming, a champion in that division, and still, it's a lot to say about, Teofimo, being able to defend his title against Shakur. Shakur gonna have to take that shit. And if Shakur can't take that shit, he got a long night ahead of him, you know what I'm saying? Because both gonna come in as, boxing, being able to box and taking their time. It's all about, taking their time. And out of the two, I give you that Shakur, you're gonna definitely take your time because we've known off your back foot you've been, cold, I ain't gonna say like he been running and shit, but sometimes you got to be able to use your back foot to be able to play defense of high pressure and coming forth pressure of a great boxer like Teofimo that's gonna try to knock out Shakur. I believe in this fight he's gonna try to knock out Shakur, but Shakur and the skills and the great footwork and great movement and being who he is as having great skills, playing defense. I think he can get out of certain punches, from Teofimo. But if Teofimo lands, you know what I'm saying, it's going to be a long night for Shakur. Now, if Shakur plays boxing well, he'll go in there and beat Teofimo, unanimous decision. Split decision is going to be close. And, he'll be a crowned new champion at 140, Shakur Stevenson. That's what it's all about, man. So I do favor, Shakur, to be able to beat, Teo. But it's not going to be an easy dub, Comment at the bottom and let me know who y'all got against Shakur and Teofimo in that fight. It's coming up, It'll be here before you know it. Comment at the bottom and let me know who y'all picking. I'm picking Shakur to be able to beat Teofimo. Unanimous decision, a close victory. Shakur ain't never really showed me no power, but breaking down fighters and eventually it catches up to, Shakur being able to get the, opponent out of there. But when you talk about power-wise and with knockout power, I give that to Teofimo all day. If he catches, Shakur, it could be a problem for Shakur if Shakur can't, hold a punch, a power punch from Teofimo. But if you go in there the whole night and you able to take Teofimo's problem, you wouldn't have a problem getting through this fight being, Teofimo becoming a new 140 pound divisional champion. You know what I'm saying? Being able to have a belt, now you can be able to take that belt at 140 and unify, you know, waiting for fighters like Gary, Antoine Russell, you know, Matias, you know what I'm saying? Albert Pulio still being there, you know, give or take, you know what I'm saying, at 140. You still got, you know, it's just a lot of good fighters at 140, you know what I'm saying, give or take, you know. That's what, you know, Shakur would have to look forward to, you know, if he beats Teofimo. So it's now or never, you know what I'm saying, you know, Shakur, if you're going to be able to, you know, go in there and make that fight with Teofimo, beating Teofimo, and now you are a new champion running that division at 140, being in place to be headed for undisputed and having the fights that you want. Yeah, Shakur Stevenson, man. But that fight is a 50-50 fight, man, you know what I'm saying? And it's not going to be, you know, easy fight, you know. Shakur, he's going to have to show me his power. If your power can't match up with Teofimo, man, it's going to be, you know, a long night for Shakur. Teofimo, one of them fighters that can land efficiently, got great accuracy, can make you pay. You know what I'm saying? He's an elite boxer, you know what I'm saying? Yes, we don't see, you know, Teofimo sloppy at 135 and moving up, but within his career, he don't got a better fighter, and worked really hard to be able to perfect, you know, his craft in this boxing sport. Taking, you know, punishment and, you know, being able to be conditioned, you know, being a solid fighter, you know, Teofimo. So you got to be able to respect Teofimo as well. And you got to be able to respect, you know, Shakur for being able to make this fight. If this fight goes in and being a green light for the fans, you know, I'm all for it. Boxing Talk 100. Yeah, man, I hope y'all like my video. You know what I'm saying? I'm just at work right now. You know, today is Thursday, man. You know, today is Thursday. You know, the 18th, September 18th. You know, it was Saturday, Sunday. It only been a couple of days. We are within the week. You know what I'm saying? So we just trying to enjoy, you know, right now. And like I said, you know, we got a lot of more fights coming up soon. We got Jake Paul and, you know, Tank. Now, I don't too much care for that fight because I know it's a bad fight, you know what I'm saying? And it's what it is. I'm not too interested in the fight. If they're able to get past this exhibition fight, you know what I'm saying, I'd be more happy about that. You know, I just think that, you know, it don't make sense, you know, for exhibition for Jake Paul. It might, you know, make sense because he feels like he's a true boxer. And he's trying to get in competition with, you know, the elite, you know, true real boxer. Which I'm not mad at that, but it's like, you know, you're going to really have to go in there and knock out Tank, you know what I'm saying, to be able to get in position to where you really want to go, Jake Paul. And I don't think Jake Paul, he can beat, you know, Gervonta Tank Davis. I think Gervonta Tank Davis going to beat his ass, make good work. I think he got a good chance of knocking out Jake Paul, you know what I'm saying, and getting rid of Jake Paul for good. And if it's not for good, you know what I'm saying, Jake Paul, what makes sense is him going to go fight fighters, you know, that he could actually, you know, go in there and compete with. Not on a level like Tank or Crawford or, you know what I'm saying, Anthony Joshua, you know what I'm saying, of these caliber fighters that got the names. I think Jake, he's just too ahead of himself. If you want a real technical type of fight, you know, Jake Paul, I think he should go to UFC, you know what I'm saying? Boxing to be good for the bag, but how long in boxing is he going to be willing to still clown on this bullshit? You know what I'm saying? Get your bag and not competing for world titles, you know, becoming a unification, you know, fight, get a belt, fight for some belts and headed towards, you know, undisputed, becoming the undisputed champion of the division. You know, Jake Paul. I don't care about no Jake Paul, man. I don't care about no Logan Paul. I don't care about none of these motherfuckers that's, you know, just in the way of boxing, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, man, yeah, I'm gonna end y'all off with that, man. This your boy K Smooth, man. Thanks for watching my video. I hope y'all have an amazing day. And like I said, man, if you are new to my channel, make sure you share this video. Make sure you like this video, and make sure you comment at the video. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, man. Yeah, man. Give me your opinion about this conversation. But yeah, man. I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and I'm gonna let y'all go. Peace. I will have more videos. You know what I'm saying? Time will tell. It's always gonna be something new. Breaking news with boxing. So just tune in and look out for your boy K Smooth, man. Boxing Talk 100. Thanks for, enjoying this video. Until next time. Peace.